Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Eat. Today is the perfect day for you to learn about supplements. Today's the perfect day. I just decided that. And lucky for you, you are in for a treat because this episode is packed with information for you to be a more critical consumer when it comes to your supplements. I had Sarah on the show around this time last year, and we talked about green flags in the supplement industry, red flags in the supplement industry, how to choose a high quality supplement. And that just scratched the surface as far as supplementation goes and all the different ways we can take the conversation. So I knew that at some point Sarah would absolutely be coming back on the show. And here she is again. Today, we are talking a little bit deeper when it comes to supplementation. We spend a lot of time focusing on the trendy supplements that we see, especially on social media nowadays, like colostrum, collagen, sea moss. We talk extensively about probiotics, about protein powders. We talk about third-party testing, which is so important. We talk about heavy metals. We talk about all the things. And Sarah really just knows her stuff. I am always learning. I could have talked to her for hours and hours and hours. I plan to have her on yet another time because it is just so evident the passion that is there and the knowledge. And supplementation can be so essential. And this is something that I've learned over the course of my years of practice, but also especially as I've gotten more into the functional lab testing space. But you really have to know what you're looking at and know what to look for and know what you're doing when it comes to supplementation, because it can be a wonderful complement to a well-balanced lifestyle. But a lot of what exists out there is low quality, is ineffective, and really understanding supplements on a deeper level will help equip you in making a better choice and ultimately getting the results that you want. So, welcome, Sarah, back to the table. I'm so happy you're here, and let's eat. Welcome to Let's Eat. I'm your host, Emily, certified holistic health coach, functional nutrition expert, and self-proclaimed wellness enthusiast, here to meet you at the intersection of physical and mental health, the space within which we become well. This podcast is meant to explore all areas of mind and body wellness, designed to offer you the integrative knowledge, behavioral strategies, and mindset shifts necessary to uplevel your health and feel better today. We'll explore nutrition, sleep, movement, self-care and stress management, habits and routines, self-development, gut health, mental health, and more. I am so happy that you're here. Welcome to the table. Let's eat. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining me again. This has been a whole year now since we last sat down and had a conversation, and so I'm really excited to have you back.
I know. Thank you for inviting me back. I'm very happy to be here.
Yes. So, for those of you who did not listen to Sarah's original episode, Sarah joined me last year and we had a wonderful conversation all about supplementation, red flags, green flags in the world of supplements, because as we know, the supplement industry is much like the food industry. So, Sarah, please catch everyone up as to what you've been up to and kind of your background a little bit for anyone who didn't get a chance to listen to last year's episode.
Yeah, background wise, I have a chemistry degree. Then I pivoted and I got really into like holistic health. So I went and got a nutrition coaching certification. I have like 10 of those at this point. And while I was like dipping my toe in the water of that industry, I started working in an apothecary selling professional grade supplements in this like integrative, holistic medical office. So I got to learn a lot of why do we have these products and not those? Why does this work better than that? How do people think of these things? How do the practitioners pick what to use? Which things work? All that. And then when I struck out on my own, I missed supplements too much. And so that's what I do now is I teach people about supplements and picking the right ones and picking better quality ones, because that's just such a huge landmine. Um,
Yes.
and right now, probably similar answer to a year ago because life is just chaotic.
Yeah.
Currently, like a good chunk of the way through completely revamping and updating Supplement Mastery, which is my practitioner training program. And then like got my butt back on Instagram, so you can go on there to like learn, or if you want to chat about something, I'm always here for it.
Yes. Honestly, Sarah is constantly humbling me in terms of my knowledge. She is so knowledgeable, so proficient in this category, and it's so important because, like I said, supplements I feel like are just the wild wild west. I know that's what you said to me last year. I'll never forget that. And it's so important that we're more aware, especially given the influx in awareness around health and how a lot of companies are now harping on that opportunity that we're seeing. I think more and more supplements and brands and use this to heal your gut, do that to cleanse your liver. It's just the list goes on and it's very deceiving. And if you don't
Hmm.
have the knowledge, you don't have the information, you're likely going to be duped into buying something that maybe isn't best for you or might not be doing anything at all, honestly. So let's dive right into it. I think probiotics and the topic of probiotics are very hot now. I think that is something that emerged as people started to better understand gut health. And I think also as digestive inflammation and digestive distress has become so prominent in our country, more and more we're seeing this, obviously, due to a number of the lifestyle factors that influence this. But I think not all probiotics are created equally, and really understanding that and doing what's best for your body is what's going to provide you with hopefully the most optimal result. So, can you just break down, let us know all things about probiotics, what we should be looking for, and kind of your thoughts on the world of probiotics?
Yeah, I feel like probiotics is its own little world, right? Like you
Yeah.
have supplements, which feels like such a big thing, and you feel like you've narrowed it down to probiotics, and then you find out probiotics is like has so much
Yeah. Yeah.
involved. Um, as far as like what they can help with and like how useful they are, I feel like everybody's like, if there's anything wrong with your gut, probiotic, right?
Mm,
Like I think that you just like see online and that's people's first reaction because it's a
sure.
product we're really familiar with and we've
Yeah.
heard of for a long time. We're like, hey, probiotics are for your gut. And yeah, like yes and no. Uh, they are obviously very important for your gut and you have an outrageous amount of
Sure.
natural
More than
bacteria in there,
human
right?
cells, right? There's more
Uh-huh.
bacteria that, yeah, which is wild.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely crazy. Um, so you're basically just putting more of a specific kind down there. That's the plan with probiotics.
Yeah.
And like there are a few instances where the probiotics are going to do more harm than good.
Sure.
So it can be like helpful to get a little bit of guidance. The other thing is that there's so many different kinds.
Mm,
And it can be like a little tricky without testing to know exactly what you're missing, although you
yeah,
can still kind of make a good educated guess and try things out and do a little trial and error. Make sure you're like checking in with yourself. How did this one work? Let me try something different,
sure,
etc. Um, but they're studied for like all sorts of things, ranging from gut health to like literally anything you can think of.
sure.
It's absolutely crazy. And you can find like specialty probiotic products for a
Okay,
tons of different things too, for mood, for weight management, for vaginal health, for like all sorts of things.
sure.
And it comes down to the strain. So
Okay,
when we talk about probiotics, the like first decision you get to make is what kind.
yeah,
And I now kind of consider it to be four categories. So the
okay,
first is like traditional. This is your lactobacillus, your bifidobacterium. This is 15 years ago, if you went to the store looking for a probiotic, this is what you'd find. Like
sure. Okay,
that's all there was, right?
yes.
Um, the second is our soil-based, which
Okay,
was like the new guy on the block until recently.
yeah,
And most of them are spore-based,
okay,
just for, I'm going to say longevity. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but like survivability, that
okay,
kind of stuff. So these generally start with the word bacillus
okay,
and is like found in the soil. So like people's claim to it is usually, well, we used to just like eat things out of the ground and not
yeah,
like sanitize
okay,
them like crazy.
yeah,
And so now we're not getting it. And the third kind is technically a yeast, not
okay,
bacteria, but it gets grouped in with the probiotics because it behaves the same way. It's actually a very cool dude, Saccharomyces, which is
okay,
like pretty specifically found as Saccharomyces boulardii.
okay.
And then the fourth kind, which is the new one, is Akkermansia.
Yes,
And
familiar.
this one is like probably start to see around more. Like I said, like everyone went nuts for the spore-based probiotics when that was
Yeah.
like the new thing. And now
Mm-hmm.
everyone is like going nuts for the Akkermansia. We just like keep hopping
Okay.
onto the next one to the
Okay.
next one.
Yes. I love
Um,
that we're getting excited about these organisms. Like it's just,
right?
yeah, yeah.
What a
Okay.
thing to, what a world.
Yeah, right?
Um, And so basically that's like your general categories.
Okay.
And then within that, you're going to have your genus, and then you're going to go down, you're going to have your species. And if you're lucky, your probiotic product is going to label the strain, but
Okay.
it doesn't always.
Okay.
And so there's all sorts of different ones, and everything is a strain. So it's just like I can say you're a human,
Yeah.
and that's true.
Yeah.
Um, and if we're talking generally speaking, like referring to human beings, like that'd be fine. But like if I'm like this person right here, you are an Emily. You are
Yeah.
not just a human, right? Like you are
Sure.
a you.
Yeah.
Um, it is something. And so when we're talking about their usefulness on specific things, it's individual strains that are being studied.
Okay.
So if you want to either try your best at replicating the results from a study or getting a certain benefit, or if you did testing and you know that you're missing something relatively specific,
Yeah.
I don't think the testing goes as far as strains, but like once
Okay.
you get to the species, you could then pick and choose based
Yeah.
on what they're studied for.
Yeah.
How
Okay.
will they survive? All of that. So when you look at the back of a bottle, or you find the picture of the label online, because let's be real, um,
Yeah.
who's doing that
And
anymore?
yeah. Yeah.
Um, we should have at least two words. That's your genus and your species. So that's your Lactobacillus acidophilus, your
Okay.
Bacillus coagulans,
Yeah.
your, whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, if you've got a strain, something else comes after that.
Okay.
And it is almost always a very confusing jumble of random letters and numbers.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Some of them are like trademarked, some of them are
Yeah.
not. But those are the things that you can go back in and trace that this is tied to. This has been studied for anxiety. This has been studied for um, candida. This has been studied for whatever.
Okay.
It's I genuinely like made a guide to probiotic strains for
Yeah.
supplement mastery, and in
Yeah.
researching what all these things like what we have studies on, it's insane.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
Um,
so
so
excited.
you can like totally like dive in like if you're
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
want to take a probiotic, I'm dealing with this. Is there anything for that?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that that's your solution
Yeah.
or that it's going
Sure.
to naturally 100% fix it. But if you
Sure.
want to try that route, there's probably something out there for it.
Yeah.
The hard part is then finding it labeled in a product
Yeah.
on the market, right?
Okay.
Not every brand labels the strain, and not every strain is like available commercially.
Yeah.
But that is the like basics for like what the name you should see on there
Okay.
is, right? Like kind of pick your category um, based on what it's for. If
Mm.
you know that you're in need of bifido, cool, go down that direction, see what types of things there are. If you want to blend, if you want something studied for something really specific.
Yeah.
And then the other thing to always consider is the dosing.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
not, unlike most things in the supplement world, it's not just the amount, it's
Yeah.
also the units.
Okay.
Because if yours is measured in milligrams, it could be dead. Like
Mm.
a lot of the brands of Akkermansia out there don't deliver the live probiotic because, as best I understand it, it needs to basically be manufactured in an oxygen-free environment, which is really
Okay.
hard.
Yeah.
Like, it took a lot of money for
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Pendulum to do it.
Yeah.
So they were like the one of like the first big Akkermansia brand, and now I'm seeing it from other places, but it usually like specifies that it's dead.
Oh.
And it's not that it does nothing,
Yeah.
but expect it to do less,
Yeah. Of
know?
course. Yeah.
Just like if you have a bottle that's been sitting there for 6 months and it's
Yeah.
like around its expiration or something, which is like a whole different topic, expirations,
Yeah.
but like it's not going to have as much as it did when it started,
Yeah.
when it was a brand new product.
Right.
It dies over time.
Yeah.
Um, but like even the dead might have some benefits. But the thing with the probiotic units is most brands use CFU, which is
Mm.
colony forming units.
Yeah.
A few brands are starting to use AFU, which is active fluorescent units, if I'm
Okay.
remembering correctly. We're going to
Okay.
test my knowledge there
Yeah.
or my memory. And both of them are a way to measure like what's live, able to replicate, able to try to like take up shop
Yeah.
or make a bigger difference in your
Yeah.
gut, right? Because you're trying to put it down there to adjust the community, I guess, so
Yeah,
to speak,
sure.
down there,
Yeah.
right? Like you're
Balance.
like,
Yeah.
you have too much of this one, not enough of this one.
Yeah.
And it's all so tied together that
Yeah.
when you introduce some new stuff, like you're gonna have some shockwaves a little bit,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. Totally.
Maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way, depending on how crazy you're going and
Yeah. Yeah.
how
Yeah.
crazy it is
Okay.
in there. Um, but you want it to be alive. And so if it says just milligrams, I would literally never buy it.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what it is. You
Okay.
don't know if it's alive. You can't really compare the dosing to anything else.
Sure.
And then the other fun little note for probiotics, and it's not that you need to make this a major factor, but if you're like comparing products, it's good to know, is some people put an expiration date on them
Mm.
and they're guaranteeing that the dosage, they're like the CFU count
Yeah.
on the bottle is there at the time of expiration. So if
Okay.
you get it when it's fresh, it's going to have more,
Yeah.
like maybe like 50% more.
Okay.
Um, and some products label the dosing at time of manufacture.
Okay.
So that's what's put in there on day one. By the time it gets to you, or if it's been sitting on the shelf for a few months, it's going
Yeah.
to have less.
Less. Okay.
So it's just like an interesting comparison point between
Yeah.
different products. And you can see, and again, it's not the hugest deal. You still, a lot of the brands that will label at time of manufacture still give you a ballpark of like how much should be there at the time
Okay.
of like the best buy
Yeah.
date on the bottle.
Yeah. Is that
Um,
required? Like, do you know if that's, how supplement brands are? And I mean, this goes for the food industry too.
mhm.
Obviously so it sounds like they're required to put a date of some kind,
Mhm.
but how is that? I don't know if that's a clear question. How is that judgment made, maybe?
So I think that they need to put like some sort of date on it,
Yeah,
but
sure.
this is where like there, especially when it comes to probiotics, is a difference between an expiration
Yeah.
date
Okay.
and a like best buy
Sure.
date.
Yeah.
Or some brands will just list the manufacturer date and they'll tell
Okay.
you the general rule of thumb is usually 2 years.
Okay.
And so the like probiotic requirements,
Yeah.
and I think this is for supplements overall, is like if it's an expiration date, like they're guaranteeing the amount listed on that label is still there up until the date of expiration
Okay. Yeah.
versus the best by date might be, and I'd have to double check this with like ingredients other than probiotics, but I
Okay.
know for probiotics where like they do die off,
Yeah. Sure.
is that usually like they're going in at that dosing
Yeah.
and it's not like a harmful bad product by the time the best buy date
Right.
comes
Yeah.
around, but they're not gonna have the amount on that
Okay.
label anymore,
Okay. That's
if that makes any sense. So
yeah.
like it's such a simple little like wording
Yeah.
thing because you just
Sure.
think like, oh, expiration date, like that's when
Yeah.
it goes bad, that's when
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But like what wording they choose to use
Yeah.
can actually like make a big difference when it comes
Yeah.
to these.
Okay. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So then, just real quick, while we're on the topic of probiotics,
Mhm.
what are your thoughts on shelf stable versus refrigerated?
I feel like this is one of those things that 10 years ago was a huge deal, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's
Okay.
like, don't waste your money if it's
Yeah.
not refrigerated.
Right.
And I think that you just have to know the brand and you
Yeah.
can investigate their testing a little bit if you want to. There are some, and this is where strains come into play because it's not just like what function does it serve in your body, because like that's number one, truly.
Yeah.
But different ones have been studied for like how well they can survive acid, how well like survivability,
Sure.
basically.
Yeah.
Um, and this also counts like temperature and things like that. And so there are definitely products out there that are shelf stable. And then
Okay.
there are probably some more sensitive ones
Okay.
that need to be refrigerated.
Sure.
And they're not quite as sensitive as people think. Like we used to in the apothecary stock a variety of both shelf stable and refrigerated probiotics.
Okay.
And the refrigerated ones during the summer would come with an ice pack, but it for a while there came with like a little card that was like, if it's warmed up, it's fine. Just put it back in the fridge. Like it's gonna
Hmm.
take multiple days at like high heat
For it to.
for it to like start to kill them off.
Okay.
So if you live in a sauna and you left it outside for a week,
Yeah.
not ideal. That's
Yeah.
that's not great. Like put it in
Sure.
the fridge and you might get a little less out of it.
Sure.
But for a normal human being who lives and it's like, 70 or 80 or something and it was like on a truck and in a facility overnight and whatever else the process for getting
Yeah.
to you is,
Yeah.
and then sits for a few hours before you bring it in, odds are it's fine.
Okay.
It's not like a tiny, delicate little flower.
Yeah.
Um,
Fair.
it's not the least delicate flower,
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
but
Yeah. Okay.
but yeah, so I would say I wouldn't make my decision based off of that,
Okay.
because there is enough variation on the market nowadays, in terms of the strains and the products. Just like people used to make a really big stink about, um, oh, 99, I don't know what percentage people said, 95% of probiotics die in the stomach before they ever get. And I'm like,
Oh yeah.
I
There's a
don't
lot
think
of
we would
companies.
have the
Yeah.
crazy amount of studies that we have if they literally all died in your stomach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's not how it
There's one
works.
brand that really tries to market that and say, their their probiotic is the
Hmm.
one that makes it to where it needs to go, and that all the rest of them are not, not legit, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I need to like look into where that comes from because I would
Yeah.
guess that it's like we didn't because people put them in like acid resistant capsules, for instance.
Yeah.
Like that's a really popular like kind of way around that.
Hmm.
Um and like just again picking maybe strains for their products that are a little bit more hardy and
Sure.
resistant to
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
But they're made to like start breaking down like after your stuff because they need to make it all the way to your large intestine,
Yeah.
right? You don't
Yeah.
want it in your small intestine, you don't want SIBO, you want it to like get all the way to where it needs to go.
Sure.
So you're not trying to break it open in the stomach.
Yeah.
Um, like maybe start breaking it down and like carry it along or something, but you're not trying to digest it as quickly as possible. I don't know if it's that
Okay.
or I don't know where that came from, but that's another
Yeah.
one where I'm like, I wouldn't overly stress about if it's refrigerated. I wouldn't overly stress about, oh my God, it's all going to die in the stomach.
Yeah.
You can see fun little hack if it doesn't say an acid resistant capsule, but it lists the ingredient for the capsule as being HPMC, which is hydroxypropyl methylcellulose. Um,
Say
leave it
that.
up to the chemist to pronounce
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, it's usually labeled as HPMC. They don't
Okay.
write it
Yeah.
out,
I was
but
gonna say they probably, yeah. Okay.
so that'll be pretty familiar. There is like a version of that cellulose that is like acid resistant.
Okay.
So if you look at most probiotic products, like that will be what the capsule's made of,
Yeah.
and that
Okay.
is
Good to
probably
know.
in order to make it acid resistant.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think that's a huge deal. I mean, when is the last time that you like saw a probiotic where not a single soul got literally anything out of it?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not a thing.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe when the market was new and nobody knew what they were doing, and you
Yeah.
can
Right.
like BS your way through the marketing, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
That worked, but I think that's a myth that like we
Okay.
can stop
Good to
freaking
know.
out about. Yeah.
Yeah. A bigger fish to fry, it sounds like.
Right. Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Okay. So we chatted a little bit about this before, and I think you've seen it too, and I certainly have across social media and especially platforms like TikTok, and how trendy certain health products have become, and how we as Americans, and I guess maybe this is international, but I'll say for the sake of
Hmm.
Americans that are users of these platforms tend to take it and run right away with it and think that this is the holy grail. This is, and this is not new, but I think it's spreading more quickly, more rapidly now, especially in maybe younger populations, because we're seeing it online, and it's now apparently going to cure everything, every ailment, every gut, every, skin problem and beyond. And so I'm referring to products like collagen, which I am a person who takes collagen, so everyone knows that, but I'll just put it out there. Sea moss, colostrum, the list goes on. Coconut cult we talked about before. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, what's trendy, what's legitimate, what are your thoughts on all of this? And, give us the scoop.
Yeah, I think, which is funny because I think it's the common thread when we were trying to like figure out like what are some of these like trendy products.
Yeah,
I think that yes, people do just like say this is the panacea and like run with it.
of course.
For sure. And I'm like, how are you doing? Like, are
Yeah.
you 1000% the most magical healed unicorn now?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, would
Yeah.
love to know.
Yeah. Please tell.
Um, I think that like a lot of different products can have benefits. You
Sure.
just have to like figure out what's actually in them. So the interesting thing is these tend to be a lot of the ones that I'm seeing more that are like along these lines are food-ish,
Okay, yeah.
right? They're somewhere between like it's not like an isolated extracted nutrient or botanical that you would never eat in real life or
Right.
or something like that. But it's also not something you're gonna buy at the grocery store and just put on your plate. But like
Totally.
maybe, right? Like I
Yeah.
guess you probably could go buy liver or sea moss.
Yeah.
And maybe the grocery store sells that. I don't know.
You even get
I've never
that.
bought it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you could grow your own. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and like obviously colostrum is just like a very specific type of milk,
Yes.
give or take.
Sure.
Um, and uh, and so we're like going back towards foods, which is like a really cool and interesting trend. The downside is that like you don't know exactly what's in there.
Totally.
Right? It's not like I can look and see how much am I getting of these nutrients? What
Totally.
are all these bioactive ingredients that they're claiming are in there?
Yeah.
You're telling me there are 100, but what are they? You've listed five,
Yeah.
things like that. And so I think you have to like see what are the claims? What are they claiming is in there?
Yeah.
And does that make sense for you?
Yeah.
Food or not, not everything is going to be like the most therapeutic for everyone.
Right.
Um, and then you also have to just like go through the extra step of judging them.
Yeah.
'Cause I kind of put them as like food like where if you're gonna only buy grass-fed organic beef, then you should probably still be buying grass-fed organic collagen,
Yeah.
right? Same goes with the colostrum. That's
Yeah.
milk coming from the cow. Like, would you buy grass-fed dairy? Like you should, same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have that, but then you also have the same concerns as you would for supplements because we are isolating it and like tinkering and putting it probably in a bottle or a pill or a powder
Yeah.
or something,
Something. Yeah.
where you're like processing other
Yeah.
ingredients, allergens,
Yeah.
and heavy metal testing, all sorts
Yeah.
of things
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that, which honestly like would be interesting, no, for your food, but like realistically, how how on earth are you literally going to do that?
Do
But
that.
you
Yeah.
can for these types of products,
Sure.
so you should.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of them can be really interesting. I
Yeah.
think that they fall into the category of like weird, but also they do seem to work for some people.
Yes.
And so I like am not the first to dismiss that. It depends on how much you think it might be a good fit for you, how
Yeah.
big your budget is, because
Yeah.
they are
They're
often
pricey.
not the cheapest.
Yeah.
Um, how much are you willing to stick with it? Because just like regular supplements, a lot of
Yeah.
times it can take a few months to tell
See.
if it's working, and
Yeah.
like you might have to fork up some cash in order
Yeah.
to do that experiment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the like plus and minus, because like I personally did try colostrum. I like made sure that I was picking a brand that was like calf first because I'm like I
Yeah.
already like feel a little weird about
Yeah.
dairy and they're
Yeah.
like that's like I get that we can but like it's not for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so especially for the ones where it's like for the new little baby calves, you're just like just want to make sure that
They're taken care of.
it's not coming from what should have been going to them.
Yes. 100%. Yeah.
And so like only like if a brand that like prioritizes that.
Yeah.
Um, and you can go other directions. Like before colostrum was on the scene, we had immunoglobulins and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
serum-derived
Mm-hmm.
immunoglobulins,
Mm-hmm.
or serum-based immunoglobulins. And that's like one of the major components, so to speak, in colostrum, but obviously there's a lot of other stuff in there as well.
Sure.
Um, and we have interesting studies on like that. We used to sell in the apothecary a product that was the same raw material as one that was in a FDA approved prescription for IBS,
Okay.
So like,
Yeah.
it's interesting. Like it's an immunoglobulin and
Sure.
you can buy it now in supplement form and now
Yeah.
you can kind of trace it back and you can get at least some, but you
Yeah.
don't know how much
Yeah.
or which kinds
Yeah.
in the colostrum. But so I had done it for like a few months and it did help a little bit with some symptoms, but then also when I got lazy and didn't want to spend money and like guess what comes back?
Yeah.
Because you didn't actually fix the problem. So if you're like, I just want a little extra
Yeah.
random PQQ and this and that like comes in there, then like you do you.
Yeah.
But also, I don't love products that only work if you take them for the rest of your life.
Yes. And that's
Like
the whole
I'm,
point. Yeah.
yeah. Collagen's like slightly different only because I feel like you're just part of it is trying to supplement specific amino acids that may or may
Sure.
not be harder to get in the types of meat or animal products or proteins in general
Yeah.
um, that you eat in your diet.
Yeah.
But people are getting really into like bone broth. I mean,
Yeah.
not getting into, they are long gotten into,
Yes.
like,
They're
you know,
committed.
has been around.
Yes.
Um, but things like that. And that is basically like contains some collagen. So
Yeah.
you can just go the dietary route for that if you
Yeah.
wanted to. Obviously, very easy to work collagen into things in a
Yeah.
way that you cannot with
Yeah.
bone broth.
Yeah.
But I know like the general idea behind it originally had been, well, humans long ago used to eat like every tiny little weird part of
Yeah.
the animal that they killed.
Yeah.
And guess who doesn't do that anymore?
Yeah.
Most of us, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Right. Yeah.
and so it's like now we're getting a different amino acid and nutrient profile
Sure.
because we're eating specific types and we're skipping over the weird ones that we don't
Or we're
want
not,
to
I mean, or we're
that we
not
didn't.
eating it at all,
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah.
And you're again, like different ingredients have
Yeah.
different like different plant or animal-based proteins have
Sure.
different amino acid profiles. And so if
Sure.
you know that you're not getting enough of a particular one, then like this is a more food-based-ish
Sure.
way to get those specific ones because
Yeah.
collagen, no matter which kind you get, no matter if you get bovine or chicken or marine, like
Yeah.
is mostly was it proline, hydroxyproline, and glycine, I
Mm.
think.
Okay.
With some other little random amino acids thrown in there.
Yeah.
But that is like what makes up the majority of it.
Okay.
And so like if those are the ones that you're not getting
Otherwise.
as much of in your diet,
Yeah.
then that could make sense. And if you're like, well, I already eat chicken feet because that's a thing I do,
Well,
or
good for
something. I don't
you.
know.
You're just better than the rest of us.
Okay.
Okay.
you know. But like if you do that, then like maybe collagen's not right for you
Yeah.
because you don't
Yeah.
need that, right?
Yeah.
Like these are all still meant to be supplements.
Yeah.
We're getting a little fancy here,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For sure. But like, do we need them? So I think it really depends on like what is supposed to be in there,
Yeah.
which can be a little bit harder to look up because it's not specifically written on the label on
Sure.
these types of products.
Yeah.
Which minerals are in the sea moss,
Yeah.
which nutrients and bioactives are in the colostrum, which amino
Yeah.
acids are in the collagen,
Yeah.
and are those ones that are helpful for you.
Yeah.
And if you do that, right, pick a good brand, pick a good product, commit to the experiment
Yes.
for a little bit, assuming
Yeah.
nothing bad happens. Obviously, if it
Yeah.
does, like stop.
Sure. Yes.
But give it enough time to work. And then what I always recommend that I think people tend to skip over really quickly is track it.
Yeah.
It's really hard to know if it's working if you don't know what to look for.
Yes. If you're not paying attention.
Especially it's
Yeah.
that whole like frog in a boiling pot of
Yeah.
water thing where
Yeah.
like when change happens gradually, you don't notice it.
Yeah.
So if you weren't tracking and you're like, well, I used to get 10 headaches a month and now I get two, like you go about your life not having a headache and you don't think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't
Yeah.
notice. And so like that is like helpful when you're taking something new, especially if you want it to accomplish something
Yeah.
specific,
Yes. You have
is
an
to
intent.
actually try to like get your baseline and check back in. And then you
Yeah.
also feel better about either not purchasing or purchasing more and sticking to it
Okay.
and
Yeah.
giving it a while longer. It was
Yeah.
really funny how many people I used to speak to who would just show me like what they were on. And I was like, oh, why are you taking it? And they're like, I don't know. Someone told me
Yeah.
to take it 5 years ago. And you're like,
Yeah.
that's not a very good reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Sure.
maybe you should, but also maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah.
And you have
Yeah.
no idea,
No
which is
idea. Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, and I appreciate that because I think you're putting more thoughtfulness into any of the ones you just listed. And I think we get carried away with the brand of it. And I appreciate that you're saying look into quality, look into specifics, because I think that's what people get carried away with is, I mean, without naming brands, there are specific brands of the ones that we just talked about
Hmm.
that have kind of taken the internet by storm, and it's a lot, I think, surrounding that, like the culture that's surrounding that of it being trendy and that it's helping us in all every which way. And And then also considering the fact that you're taking, say, colostrum, but everything else
Hmm.
in your life is misaligned and you're
Hmm.
not taking care of yourself, that's the problem too, which I think just falls
Hmm.
in line with our, medical culture where it's a pill for every ill type of thing, or, you can do this one isolated thing and keep everything the same and still get results. So I think there's a
Hmm.
lot of that mixed in there, and sooner or later we're gonna have another product that's out there and it's gonna do the same exact thing. And so I'm grateful to have the insight that you just shared around it about how we can be a little bit more intentional and a little bit more investigative around what we're taking, why we're taking it, what we should be looking for, and take some consideration because, like you said, it is costly. And if you have $90 to spend every month on a container of whatever it is that you're taking, but you could go to the grocery store and get the real whole foods that you're not eating
Hmm.
with that $90. I think that there should be some awareness around that.
Right.
And there's just not, you know?
Yeah. It's honestly like really interesting that you just like pinpointed that it tends to be certain brands that we can kind of
Yeah.
isolate as being the instigator of the
Yeah.
trendiness.
Yeah.
Because it's very true. And I also think that it's really interesting. Like I was like in the last few days thinking about buying some sort of like red light therapy device
Okay.
and wanted like actually went to go research because I'm like, what I'm seeing is the
Yeah.
same brands. And you know why? It's because they offer affiliate programs.
Yes.
And one
Yeah.
person gets on it and then another person gets on it and does the same thing.
Sure.
And that's how they become the popular one
Yeah.
in the tiny orb that I live in on social media,
Yeah.
like, but who's to say what's actually the best one?
Sure.
And so it's like very interesting. Like you just have to remember to like take a step back and like evaluate the product for
Sure.
itself.
Yes.
And not just like this is the one that I've heard about,
Yeah.
right? Like that's why
Yeah.
brands make all sorts of weird ads and jingles and things
Right.
is they just want to be top of mind so that when you
Yeah.
go to buy one, you buy theirs.
Yes.
That doesn't
And
mean
and
theirs is,
and it's not to say that there's still not potentially a good
oh yeah.
quality product, but you're right,
Hmm.
where it's like
Yeah.
you're inundated with this is the superior product, but you can
Hmm.
easily find something that has more quality to it, might even be less expensive, but it's the no-name brand that you don't really
Hmm.
know about, but it's still legitimate. It does what it's intended to do. And brands get away with charging more money when they are so popular, and
Oh
they
yeah.
know that they can charge a certain amount because people are going to buy it because of how popular the brand is being.
Hmm.
So yeah, just
Yeah, there's a plus and a minus there because I definitely think that you do hopefully the ones that get popular like are saying the right things, which
sure.
I mean you have to be able to like see through that at least a little bit,
Yeah,
but hopefully are like the good ones.
yeah,
You just like can't assume that.
yeah,
And then the other interesting thing is as much as I would love to like always support the smallest business and stuff
yeah.
like that, they're also when it comes to supplements not always the ones who do enough testing,
Yes.
who
Yeah,
all like they might have a wonderful idea and a great formulation, but
yeah,
like if you cannot back it up with like this is why it's
yeah,
safe,
yeah,
then like you might be stuck going with
yeah,
the bigger one just
yeah.
because you have that peace of mind
That
and you know
information.
how they
Yeah,
process and you have more information on them and you
yeah,
have the test results and you have all these things. So it's honestly like picking the right supplement. It's just priorities, right?
yeah,
It's just figuring out like what ticks enough of the boxes for you, narrow it down to that, and
yeah.
then look at like what does each one have over each other,
Sure.
right? What's the nutrient makeup? What's the test results? What's the whatever? What's the cost, right?
Yeah,
What's the brand? All that. And like which one overall makes the most sense for you.
yeah. All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess segueing, this is also pretty trendy, but I think a little bit less trendy, more, I don't know, less trendy,
Hmm.
more, it's been around for quite some time. Protein powders. Thoughts on
Hmm.
protein powders? The world of protein powders spans far and wide. I think
Hmm.
this goes for a lot, like you had mentioned about probiotics. Same thing with protein powders. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much to it.
Hmm.
So thoughts on the world of protein powders?
I think it is like a pretty normalized product at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
But I agree that it's like in the same category of like it's kind of food, right? Because you generally have like your pea or your whey or
yeah,
your rice or your whatever like base protein. But it also is like in supplement form.
yeah,
And it's, you know, a heap of powder on your plate does not look very much like any
Yeah.
other protein that you would put on there.
Sure.
It is definitely like supplementing. I'm a fan overall. You
Yeah.
just have to like pick the right one.
Totally. Yeah.
I think that this is one of the examples where it's not just like the super niche holistic
Yeah.
wellness community that's
Yeah.
like big on protein, right? Like there's
Yeah.
a ton of people who are very into either the higher protein versions of things or protein powders or like the gym bros, the like
Yeah.
everything. And so there's a lot more variation and variety on the market when it comes to protein powders than when it comes to colostrum or
Yeah.
collagen or something like that.
Sure.
And can take the very, very easy step, which is, right, is there artificial gunk in it?
Yeah.
Because there are still a lot of ones that use artificial
So
sweeteners.
many. Oh my
I
God.
would not be surprised. I guess I don't look at a lot, but I would not be surprised if there's a lot of artificial flavors.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of them color their products weird, but like,
Yeah.
who knows?
Who
Maybe.
knows?
I wouldn't put
Yeah.
it past them.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Um, and so like I would very first be like no artificial stuff.
Yeah.
Regardless. And then you get to like, plant versus animal based. And animal based used to look like dairy. And now you can also get like beef and
Yes.
bone broth and like all
Yes.
these other different protein sources. And again, your amino acid profile is going to be a little bit different.
Sure.
Really common practice for protein powders, though, is to put the amino acid profile
Yeah. Yeah.
either
Yeah.
on the product or at
Sure.
least like on the website.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if you're really curious or it's really important to you, most people just use it to like bulk up some extra protein
Yes.
and they're just like, I'm happy, whatever.
Yeah.
But
If it
especially
tastes
if
good.
you, right, like, right,
Yeah.
like that's not
Yeah.
the your
Yeah.
first priority.
Sure.
But the info is there if you want it.
Totally.
And especially if you're not eating a lot of protein or have a really restricted diet,
Yeah.
and you know that you're probably lower in certain ones, you could use that to maybe try to pick ones that are a better match for you.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, Again, I don't really know many people
Yeah.
who pick their protein powder that way, but it's there if you want it.
Yeah.
I personally use one that's like a blend of different things
Oh,
because
cool.
I've like used, I think it was whey in the past, and like it did not agree with me.
Yeah.
But I also know that plant proteins tend to be very chalky
Yeah.
and like the texture is not great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it's like gross, you're like, I'm not going to use it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Sure.
going to spend the money on it and it's going to sit
Yeah.
there and stare at
Yeah.
me
Yes.
until
I'm like,
5 years
yeah.
go by. And I'm like, I guess I should just throw this out.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
does me zero good.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to balance out, right? It needs to be good enough that you're going to like be willing to take it or
Sure.
want to take it, hopefully.
Sure.
Um, and the way to that is hopefully not with weird artificial birthday cake flavoring and,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got that because it's food like, I will say. Again, you're gonna have to balance out like how you would pick food, right? Would you want organic? Would you want dairy to be grass-fed?
Yeah.
Um, those regular ingredients, just like you're gonna have like the flavors and the different things, just like you would in like which other supplements have like salt and sweeteners and
Yeah.
like all these other things in the other ingredients, right? Like not many, but they do in
Yeah.
protein.
Yeah.
Um, and so you have to go based on that, but then you also have to judge based on testing, right? Because you're like in a manufacturing like facility where you want to make sure that there's no bacteria and E. coli
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
heavy
Oh boy.
metals
Yeah.
and like all that kind of stuff that can
Yeah.
either naturally be in the ingredients or
Sure.
somehow get messed up somewhere along the line of the
Yeah.
process.
Okay.
Um, and so those are some of your more normal like supplement check
Yeah.
boxes.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I like it not necessarily instead of,
Yeah.
right? Like
Of
normal
course.
dietary protein.
Yes.
Like I use it to add some, I use it with like yogurt every day. I do like
Okay.
Greek yogurt and so it's already like plain.
Yeah.
And like some people like that. My mother likes that. I'm like, it's a no-go.
Okay. Yeah.
It needs to taste a little bit better than that for me to want to eat it
Right.
every day.
Yes. Totally get it.
And so like the protein like adds more protein and now it bulks it instead of being like a like decently high like protein source for like a
Yeah.
small serving of food, it makes it a meal's worth.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then the other thing for me is like it adds the flavor
Totally.
and the sweetness
Yeah.
without adding a ton of sugar
Yes.
or something, because I usually go for like the stevia monk fruit
Yes.
type things. I
Sure.
don't know if there's much allulose in protein powders yet, but that's the like newest
The newest. Yeah.
non-artificial but non-sugar,
Option.
not sugar alcohol,
Yeah.
like natural sweetener option.
Sure. Okay.
Um, but yeah, so I mean it's just like wildly convenient.
Yes.
And I know a
Yes.
lot of people just do like shaker bottle with water,
Yeah.
and that's not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, me
But like
neither.
it's a great option if you
Yeah.
really need it, right? Like I will travel with the little sticks because
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm gonna eat on like a travel day
Yeah.
or where I'm
Yeah.
going or something, and it's like nice to be able to bring it with you.
Yeah. Totally.
Um, so yeah, I think like as a small part of your day and you're eating regular
Yeah.
protein sources in the
Sure.
forms of real food the rest of the day, I think it can be just a nice option to have on hand, or even,
Yeah.
people bake with it where
Yeah.
you're like, I'm just gonna. It's funny because I think you see a lot of the recipes and they're like high protein muffins, and you're like, you added like 2 scoops of protein powder to a whole batch of
Mhm.
muffins. You know
Yeah.
that there's like 2 more grams of protein in each muffin, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not
Yeah.
20 grams per muffin.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
two, like
Yes.
like
Yes.
it, it's more than it was before, but like,
Yes. Yes. But high,
so
high protein's a little bit of
higher.
a reach. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But there's like a lot of clever things that people do with
Yes.
it,
Take care
right?
of
You've
it.
got like the Ninja Creamy was like a
Oh my
huge
God.
craze
Yes.
because
Yes.
you could like make your protein powder ice
Yes.
cream and
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And so like you can do some interesting things with it.
Yeah.
For sure. There's like a lot of places to go wrong because there's a lot of garbage on the market when it comes
Yes.
to protein powder. Because
Indeed.
it's, I feel like, a very big part of the
Yes.
industry.
The very
Um,
saturated
and
industry.
they
Yeah.
also know that it's something that I think a lot of consumers aren't looking very closely at.
Yes.
And
Yes.
like they're buying whatever is cheap
Yeah.
and rated well and suggested on Amazon
Yeah.
and calling it a day. And that's maybe not the highest quality product
Yeah.
out there by
Yes.
a long shot.
Yeah. I think a good rule
Um,
of thumb there, like you said, the birthday cake flavor is to really like right off the bat. Like that was something I got caught up in my early 20s.
mhm.
I don't know what the brand was called, but I had a girl that I worked with and she liked this one brand and you could get any flavor you wanted. And I got all the sample packs, red velvet cake, caramel toffee, what, like all of these
Yeah.
crazy flavors. And just like looking back in retrospect, it's like, let's, I mean, I think a good rule of thumb, unflavored vanilla chocolate. Those are like
hmm
that's a solid place
Yeah.
to stay. Not this is not a general statement. There's probably lots of better quality out there, but really reaching here with some of these flavors, you know that the ingredients in them to make it taste that way is probably a little bit questionable.
Yeah, I would say like you definitely have to look at your ingredient list.
Yes.
And you may or may not have to lower your expectations if you're used to the like artificially flavor, like somehow we have found the exact
Yes.
chemical makeup that tastes very much like red velvet cake,
Yeah. Like how do they
But
do
yeah,
it?
like the one that I buy, like I Snickerdoodle is like my go-to flavor.
Okay.
And it's like vanilla extract and like
Okay.
cinnamon. Like those are the
Yeah.
ingredients in it that
Yeah.
give it the flavor. And I'm like,
Yeah.
cool. That's what I would like use in real
Yeah.
life. That's great. Or like I just bought a berry one and it's like strawberries,
Yeah.
raspberries,
Yeah.
like things like that. And you're
Real
like, all right, cool.
ingredients.
Like that is
Yeah.
literally food just ground, probably
Yeah.
dried and ground up.
Friend.
Like
Yeah.
I'm on board. I'm good
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
So like you just have to pay close attention with your flavors.
Totally. Yeah.
But yeah, read
Okay.
those ingredient lists for sure.
Yes. Yes, that's a good place to start. And I
hmm
think too, and I'm sure you can echo this, is so many proteins now also include, and we talked about this in the last episode, additional blends. So digestive blends, and typically they're proprietary blends. And I know how you feel about
hmm
proprietary blends, but like different blends, antioxidant blends, like all of these additional things to make this one product appear so incredibly perfect, right? And
hmm
something that, I went through the motions of that, right? I went through, finding ones. I was like, oh, wow, like this one's so comprehensive. And now it's like I have a 3 ingredient protein powder that is protein and that's it because that's what I want it for. Not to say that there's not brands out there that have quality product that do include some of these additional blends or these benefits that, come along with it. I just feel as though if you're looking for a protein powder, I would encourage listeners to seek out that and that alone and then prioritize these other additional benefits that are sometimes included in protein powders in other ways. I don't know if you have thoughts on that. I'd imagine you probably feel similarly, but I'm curious.
Yeah, no, this is honestly like triggering memories of products that like I know they exist. It's just been a while since I've looked at one.
Hmm.
But yeah, the protein powder that is in my home right now
Yeah.
is protein.
Yeah.
Like it's just protein.
Yes.
And then I eat it with real foods.
Yes.
And
With that
get my
digestive
other
blend,
nutrients
the
from that, right? Yeah.
antioxidant blend. Yes. Right.
Um, but they're also like when you start looking at some of these professional brands and even some that aren't, you hit more things that look an awful lot like protein powder but are made to be meal replacements.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that's not just adding, it's usually like adding vitamins and minerals,
Yeah.
right? And then maybe like depending on if your protein would have naturally had any or not, like a little fat or something.
Okay.
Um, and then some of them are plain, like just as a meal replacement for if you're like super crazy or something. And then a lot of them are like for specific issues.
Okay.
And the ones that I still see like popular to these days are the people who like to do their like detoxes,
Okay. Yeah.
which is just starvation for a week if I
Yeah.
look at it. And I was like, well, no wonder you lost 5 pounds because you didn't
Yeah.
eat food for 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so not a fan of those,
Yeah.
but where it's basically we take this protein powder plus multivitamin, let's just say,
Sure.
built in. Um, and we added some sort of additional blend, right, for GI,
Yeah.
for inflammation,
Yeah.
for detox, for whatever.
Yeah.
And like if you really want that, or if it's been studied, because some of those like have had studies done on them, if you get really specific.
Yeah.
But for like the average person, that's probably not the most important. And what's always really funny to me is that the thing that I see like combined with protein powders the most is like the digestive stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, honey, like powder and water is going to be the easiest thing you're going to digest all day. Like if you need
Yeah.
enzymes, take it with one of your normal
Yeah.
meals. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I
It's
think
not
we're
the
going
it's
to be
not the meal to
fine.
yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Um and so like depending if it's something where like you really wanted those specific nutrients
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah.
then cool. Um, but it's not like a million times better. And you really need to start again, like that is the portion, right? Maybe your protein powder is a little bit more on the food than
Yeah.
supplement side, but that
Yeah.
is more on the supplement than food
Sure.
side.
Yeah.
So you really want to actually see like what are those ingredients? What are the forms? Are they going to
Yeah.
be any good?
Yeah.
What are the doses? And like
Yeah.
some of these products don't show you that. They
Yeah.
like lump it literally all in together into one big thing.
Yeah.
There could be almost nothing in there. Like I'd
Yeah.
honestly probably rather have my raspberries with it, but I
Yeah.
was going to
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
like my like nutrients and stuff
Right.
than this like weird little mix. And if that's something super important to you, then I would probably, unless it's clearly written out on the label
Yeah.
and it like hits what you wanted to,
Yeah.
I would say just like focus on a protein powder that you're like really happy with and then find a different product or some foods to eat or some whatever
Yeah.
that like hits your other needs
Yeah.
and make sure you time that out like as the best time of your day to take
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then you can get exactly what you want. Like you're
What you want.
gonna
Yeah.
kind of half-ass both things if you try to
Yeah.
do both,
Sure.
most of the time,
Yeah.
generally speaking. And
Okay.
so I would just again, if you can find something that based on the label is perfect, then great.
Sure.
And assuming that you can't, then I wouldn't overly stress about needing the fancy version,
Yeah.
right? I would especially like I have a variety of different I use the same like one or two flavors every day,
Yeah.
but I like to try new different ones. And a lot of those have like one specific weird flavor
Yeah.
because that's what masks the other ingredients in there. Like
Yeah.
there's an anti-inflammatory one, and everyone would be like, "Do you have it in chocolate?" And I'd be like, "No, sorry, I only have it in pineapple." Because they like added it to
Yeah.
offset
Yeah.
like the turmeric and the ginger
Right.
in it. Like,
Right.
I'm
Right.
sorry,
Right.
this is all
Right.
I can give
Sorry.
you. This is all they make.
That's funny. That's so funny. Yeah, it's so random too, but it's like
I
it
know.
makes sense. It does make sense. That does mask
Right, yeah.
flavor. It
Yeah.
does. For anyone who wants to know, add pineapple to your smoothie. If you're
Right.
adding ginger or even greens
Too
to it, I
funny.
mean, pineapple
Yeah.
does a lot, does the work.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm glad that you spoke on that.
hmm
All right. So Tell us a little bit about bioavailability. I know, you're speaking a lot to the value of eating real whole foods, which we know is definitely more bioavailable in a lot of ways because it's providing us nutrition in the way nature intended it to be provided. So that overall is superior food first. Love that. But in the world of supplements, speak on, I guess, bioavailability and what that means, what to look for. How do we know if something's
Mhm.
bioavailable?
Bioavailability. I feel like we see the word more and more.
Yeah.
People have like really latched on, which is great. It's important.
Yeah.
Like general gist, if you just want to walk away with it, you can kind of sub out the word absorption in your mind and it gets you on the right track. In my mind, it's really like how well your body can absorb and use
Okay.
an
Yeah.
ingredient. So I think if you like look up the official definition, like it's more of like getting the whole thing like to where it needs to go, like to be able to do its job,
Okay.
basically.
Yeah.
Right? How available it is it to like the body.
Fine. Yeah. Yeah.
And so when it comes to supplements, we are largely looking at the forms of ingredients.
Okay.
First step is that absorption, and that's usually where things are going to have a problem if they're going to have a problem.
Sure.
A lot of things, and this can go for like botanical extracts, but vitamins, minerals, solubility can be a problem here. So how well
Okay.
does it like break in like turmeric? Really poor bioavailability, but really popular, right?
Yeah.
Curcumin and turmeric, really popular for inflammation. There's a lot of other ingredients no one remembers about that are also
Yeah.
good for inflammation, but that's the popular one. And it's very has very poor bioavailability and
Okay.
very poor solubility. I
Okay.
literally had a rep one time as an example, bring a water bottle, take a little capsule of like a generic like turmeric or turmeric extract or powder or something and mix it in and like shake up the water bottle and it's like sitting there in a clump, like in the water. So when you put that down your digestive tract, like it's
Yeah.
not all over the place, like trying to get absorbed. It's just like
Yeah.
hanging out and floating through like
Yeah.
the lazy river,
Wow. Yeah.
like all in its own little party.
Yeah.
Versus you pick these like more optimized extracts that have either been mixed with like fat in some way or
Yeah.
they do all sorts of different things to it to make it either more water soluble or whatever. She picked their product. Obviously, she was selling theirs. Put that capsule in water, shook it up, and like the whole water bottle turns kind of orange. And
Okay.
it
Yeah.
also kind of disperses better.
Yeah.
And it's more bioavailable. And unsurprisingly, you can absorb that a lot better.
Okay.
So just like a very interesting visual, if you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
pretend that you
Totally.
saw that.
Yeah.
And that's like a very extreme example because it's
Yeah.
not only very easy to see because turmeric is like bright
Of
orange,
course.
but it also is like very poorly bioavailable.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you have the absorption and some things don't absorb as well. This is why liposomal stuff has gotten really popular.
Yeah.
It's traditionally, I've seen it mostly for fat soluble ingredients.
Okay.
Which is like certain vitamins, but also certain like herbs and botanicals
Yeah.
are
Okay.
more fat soluble, like turmeric,
Interesting.
fat soluble, which is
Yeah.
why it's probably like very not water soluble
Yeah.
and has trouble just being delivered as a pill. And vitamin C, weirdly,
Mm.
which is
Mhm.
water soluble, very popular as like a liposomal
I was
product.
always confused by that, honestly. I won't lie. Like knowing that and knowing
Mm-hmm.
the difference, what's
Mm-hmm.
water soluble, fat soluble, and then
Yeah.
also seeing products that are liposomal form and it was just always confusing for me. So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think you can make a lot of it, like you can force it
Yeah.
into a liposomal like
Okay.
mixture.
Yeah.
Which like still can help with absorption because basically as your body takes up like the fat, it like all the other like the supplement of whatever kind is mixed in there.
Okay,
And so
yeah.
like it just gets brought into.
Yeah.
But yeah, that wouldn't be like the very first. If I'm like, I'm only allowed to give you the liposomal form of one vitamin,
Yeah.
that would not be my first pick only
Yeah,
because I think that you
totally.
would do okay
Without.
with like a regular one.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, but yeah, usually fat soluble vitamins and nutrients and botanicals. But that is like step one, is just like getting it through your intestines into your system, into your
Sure.
body. And then the second stage of that, which is probably less of a thing for a lot of ingredients, but more so for some of the like vitamins,
Yeah.
especially maybe the minerals, is how to get it into where it wants to go or into the form that your body needs to use it in.
Yeah. Okay.
So for some vitamins, right, you have to like convert it a few times,
Yeah,
right? Like, this
yeah,
is one of
yeah.
the things that we don't love as much about folic acid compared to folate or
Sure.
folinic acid is that's like a synthetic form. And while like it is absorbable,
Yeah,
it is not in a state, like it's not in a form that your body's going to use it.
totally.
So it needs to go through a few steps. Your body has to do some work to it in order to get it in a kind that in a version that it can use.
Totally.
And so like I would say from the absorption side, like it's not too bad. And from the ready to use form side of things, it's not as bioavailable,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And then even just things like magnesium,
Yeah.
right? If you're like, well, I really wanted it for the brain, number one, magnesium like absorption and bioavailability varies kind of
Okay.
across the board.
Okay.
There's so many forms of
Yeah.
magnesium out there on the market. But we have some that are like studied to be able to like very easily cross the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah.
I do think that magnesium, like broken down on its own, can. It's not like we literally never got magnesium in our brain until this
Yeah.
patented magnesium L-threonate hit the scene,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But this is like the more guaranteed, easy way to do it.
Yeah.
And so like things like that, you can, I guess, kind of throw into this category.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so bioavailability, how your body's going to be able to use it,
Yeah.
be able to absorb it.
Yeah.
So things like that are really helpful. Specific forms is generally where it's either that delivery format, right? Like it's in a liposomal mixture, it's micellized, it's whatever, or the actual form, right? It's 5 MTHF
Yeah.
folate versus folic acid,
Yeah.
different forms.
Yeah.
Um, and like sometimes it matters more than others. Like B12, I went down a rabbit hole, I want to say
Yeah.
last year, and actually like managed to find a study that broke down how the B12 gets used after your body absorbs it.
Okay.
And basically it all got broken down. It separated the ligand, which is the like extra little bit that determines the form, from the B12 itself.
Okay.
And then it remakes whatever form it wants to use. So you're not really any worse or better off with which form you use, as opposed to like methyl gets used for this, adenosine gets used to this. But like your body's smart enough that it's like, just give me whatever B12 you can find and like
Yeah.
I will deal with it, you know?
Oh, neat. Okay.
Um,
Cool.
and so like you're mostly looking at, in that case, not really absorption
Yeah.
and not really like usage. It's just
Yeah.
like like how do you feel when you take them?
Yeah.
Avoiding the cyano form just because there's like no need for
Yeah.
cyanide if you don't if you
Yes.
don't need it.
Yeah. If you're good
But
without it
like
for
bioavailability, less
yeah.
of a concern, you know?
Yeah.
So there's
Okay.
like all these interesting nuances.
Cool.
Um, some of the other B vitamins have what I would call like activated or active
Okay.
forms, just like the difference between like folate and folic
Yeah.
acid.
Yeah.
And it is like B6, for example, and I think it's like the pyridoxal 5-phosphate and P5P is B6, for instance, as opposed to just pyridoxine.
Okay.
But like if you like look at the Body Smart, right? And
Yeah.
we didn't used to have all these supplements at our
Yeah.
disposal, right? It just
Right.
used to be like whatever we get from nature and our body like figures out the easiest way to get the nutrients that it needs.
Sure.
It's very smart. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
We're
No, it
like
is.
still learning so many things.
Yeah, but our body's
Um,
incredible.
and and so like we have to balance this like I have some data and studies and like anecdotes and things of people who like this seems to do this better,
Yeah.
the like more active form,
Mm-hmm.
with the fact that it seems like the body removes that ligand, again,
Mm-hmm.
the little extra bit that makes it a different, more activated form, and just absorbs the regular version
Yeah.
because it does that across the board to a lot of different nutrients that like
Sure.
get taken in so that it could just like take everything in normal and like deal with it later,
Yeah.
kind of.
Okay.
So very interesting. Goes for a lot of things. Collagen, for instance, you would be looking at greater bioavailability, better absorption, when you are, and this is how most of them on the market are, I think, either sold as peptides
Okay.
or sold as, oh my goodness, I've spoken too many words. All my words are gone. Oh my goodness, you probably know this word.
Hydrolyze?
There we go. I was like, you're gonna know what it is.
I was
It's
gonna
like
say,
really
what is she
common on
being
collagen
hydrolyzed?
models. Thank you.
Okay.
And so in that case, like collagen is a big protein,
Yeah.
and meat when we break it down into peptides or when it's been hydrolyzed, it's broken down into these small little bits so that they're easier to absorb because we're not going to break down, right? It's the whole thing of
Yeah.
like chew your food
Yeah.
because it makes it easier to
Sure.
digest because you
Sure.
have to break it down into these
Yeah.
like smaller units to absorb it in the first place. So
Okay.
use your
Yeah.
teeth so that your body doesn't have to do the rest of the work for you. Same
Yeah.
idea, right? Instead of
Yeah.
providing the collagen as this whole big hunk, we've broken it down into those small pieces that are ready to be absorbed,
Yeah.
basically.
Make it easier.
And so it makes it more bioavailable than if a collagen product was not
Yeah. Okay.
hydrolyzed or peptides. So we can
Yeah.
apply the bioavailability word kind of like across a
Yeah.
lot in the supplement world. It just how that actually looks
Yeah.
kind of differs product to product.
Product to product. Interesting. Yeah, this is
Hmm.
all something I never really knew. I knew about the concept of bioavailability. I knew it can be compromised. Absorption can be compromised, especially when we are stressed or like there's a number of reasons why it can be, but just understanding each individual area, it's really fascinating. So I'd love to hear about a recent post that you shared on Instagram about heavy metals. I think heavy metals, especially since Hugh Kitchen had some controversy, and the only reason I'm naming brands is because we're seeing brands,
Hmm.
with like Stanley Cups, and I mean, the list goes on. There's all this controversy or uproar about studies coming out about these brands testing positive for heavy metals and what that means and what that looks like. So I just in a simple way, how might you address these concerns when in reality we are likely consuming heavy metals in a number of different ways, right? And
Hmm.
because of the way our food is raised and things of that capacity, and just your general thoughts about the concept of heavy metals in
Yeah.
supplement. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we see like more and more and more about heavy
Mhm.
metals, and it obviously like sounds very scary.
Sure.
And there does need to be like a balance because we don't want to just be super complacent and be
Yeah.
like, ah, sure, who cares? It's literally out there, whatever.
Yeah.
But you also have to like realize that they're like naturally occurring in the
Yeah.
earth, right? In
Yeah.
the soil, probably in the water, all these things. And it's going to make its way into the plants and the animals that we not only eat, but also make our supplements out of. And so it's probably not going to be zero
Yeah.
every time
Yeah.
across the board. It's interesting because even like you can tie it to different things, and different things are more risky, right? Like we know when it comes to fish, right? Like tuna, higher in mercury. Be careful, don't eat it as often. Pick the right brand so that
Sure.
it's safer and tested, things like that. And you can kind of make like some interesting connections, like when we were talking about protein powders, plant proteins tend to test higher in like heavy metals,
Okay.
and chocolate tends to
Yeah.
be higher. Just
Mhm.
like you were saying, like,
Yeah.
if a chocolate bar is, well, guess what? Like chocolate turned into a powder to use in your protein powder does too.
Yeah.
So interesting things like that. But we want to make sure that the companies are still doing testing. Even
Totally.
if we're expecting that the numbers maybe not going to be zero, we still
Yeah.
want to make sure that it's reasonably low and safe. And it also gives you the opportunity if brands are sharing, which I don't think that like every brand ever existing has to fully share their entire test results. And the ones that have proprietary blends are probably not going to
Yeah.
because it would like give away their secret. It's very
Sure.
interesting. I see a lot of every time I see one, I click on it. Right. Every time I see a COA or a certificate of analysis or a test result or anything, I click on it and I look. And a lot of brands either aren't giving you all the pages
Yeah.
or aren't doing the right amount of testing.
Okay, yeah.
And
That would make
so like
sense.
it is, very helpful like if they provide it
Yeah.
to look at it.
Yeah.
And if they provide it, you also can compare. If you're like, well,
Yeah.
I was debating between these two proteins,
Yeah.
how do they compare?
Sure.
With the caveat that this is one batch
Yeah.
and the next batch could be different
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
results could be switched. And some products are interesting. Some brands these days will let you like enter your batch number. Like if you actually buy the product, there will be like a batch number on it right by like the expiration or the best by date or whatever. And you can like enter that in their website and actually pull up the results for like the exact product in your
Cool.
hand.
Okay.
And so that's
Yeah.
always neat and appreciated.
Yeah, and transparent. Definitely.
It's cool to be able to see it, and you also know that it's not like some generic, like they picked the best
Yeah.
one that year
Yes.
and put that one
Yes.
on their
Yeah.
website. But testing is important, not just for the heavy metals, how much is in there. It also should be testing that the ingredients that are on the label are in the product
Yeah.
and the amounts that they claim are on the
Yeah.
label. That's what's
Yeah.
in the product.
Yeah.
Should be testing for like bacterial contaminants, fungal contaminants. Should be, depending on the product testing, if it's like the oil's been
Yeah.
oxidized and gone bad.
Yeah.
Some, plant things, hopefully some like pesticide, herbicide type of
Sure.
residues.
Yeah.
Some ingredient, like different ingredients or products will have like solvents based on how like extraction processes work to make sure
Okay.
that like that's not really there. But heavy metals is just like a really easy one to look at. Like make sure that the ingredients and the doses match,
Yeah.
right? This is also where it's really interesting if you pull up one for probiotics
Yeah.
and you compare one for an expiration date versus a best by date. Like
Yeah.
even if they both say like 15 billion CFU, like one of them
Yeah.
might be 15, the other one might be 30,
Yeah.
because at the end of its life, it's going to be at 15.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's just like interesting to be able to look behind the scenes just a little bit. You want to see that it's in there. They're not necessarily going to break it down super far. Like I personally think it would be really interesting to see the different kinds. So there's like organic and inorganic forms of
Okay.
heavy metals,
Yeah.
and the toxicity levels can be very different.
Yeah.
And they
Okay.
tend to just test overall, like the
Yeah.
total. Like arsenic, for instance, which is what we've like, there's been a big stink, like with big concern over like rice,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
then like fish and seafood, like is our like
Yeah.
other big dietary source of it.
Yeah. Okay.
And so for instance, like marine collagen,
Yeah.
if you like saw that whole thing about like vital proteins, collagen, heavy
Yeah.
metals, like, and you actually looked at the report that is based off of, they
Yeah.
tested a lot of different collagens from a lot of brands. And the marine collagen was like 5 times higher in arsenic
Yeah.
than the regular one. But like fish is higher in
Yeah.
arsenic
Yeah.
than cows.
Sure.
And fish tend to be mostly organic arsenic that's in and out of your body in like a day or two.
Yeah.
The inorganic is going to stay, mess stuff up,
Yeah.
be super toxic.
Yeah.
So, like, I would be more interested in knowing how much is
Yeah.
organic versus
Yeah.
inorganic, for
Interesting.
instance, versus just the total.
Yeah.
So there's like some levels of detail depending on how much you
Yeah.
care or are curious and feel
Yeah.
like researching or
Sure.
digging a little bit. That like I personally see a lot and bugs me
Mm-hmm.
is I want to see the number.
Yeah.
I want to see like here's what your limit is.
Yeah.
Here's what your product tested as,
Yeah.
pass or fail.
Yeah.
A lot of them will just say pass or fail.
Uh,
Like guess how many times I've seen fail?
yeah.
Literally never.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
once. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
But like how close was it to the limit? Was it really
Yeah.
low? Was it
Yeah.
really high and almost
Absolutely.
failed? Like
Yeah.
makes a big difference.
Makes a big difference.
And
Yeah.
so that is the post that you're referring to. There's a difference between like testing positive for heavy
Yeah.
metals because a lot of things are going to. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that it should be for every heavy metal,
Yeah.
every product, every time.
Yeah.
Hopefully you get some where it's zero or
Yeah.
like not detected, ND
Yeah.
on that. But like realistically, a few of them are going
Yeah.
to test positive for
Yeah.
something at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And it does not have to be the end of the world. And there's a difference between that and testing high.
Yeah.
And everyone freaks out like, oh my God, this tested positive. You're like, okay, but what was the number?
Yeah.
Because like I would much rather know if it was like the teeniest,
Yeah.
tiniest bit,
Sure.
or if it was
Person.
like, oh, that's a bunch. Like
Yeah.
that's a
That's a lot.
problem.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
Right.
and so, and it's really funny because they tend to, the people who fearmonger around this
Yeah.
tend to be promoting a different product
Yeah.
that they sell that they feel more comfortable and
Yeah.
confident in because
Yeah.
it's been tested for heavy metals or third party tested for heavy metals. They didn't say if it tested positive
Yeah.
or if it tested high, just that it's
Yeah.
been tested. Guess what?
Yeah.
Most products have been tested.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just tested positive.
Yeah.
Like if you looked
Yeah.
at that report, Vital Proteins actually was not the best, but one of the better outcomes
Yeah.
on that whole freaking sheet of like
Yeah.
the 20 to 30 brands that were tested.
Yeah.
They didn't tell you
Yeah.
that, you know?
Yeah. And I see that. I mean, there's so much fear mongering around this. And it's recently I had a girlfriend of mine send me a post about the matcha that I use and, kind of up in arms about it. And I simply was like, I can't. Like I just can't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
can't. And this person, not the person who shared it with me, but the person who was posting about it, her whole platform is about, I guess, toxins or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. And it just was frustrating to me because it just feels like this is just a grab at trying to be the person who exposed this
Mm-hmm.
well-renowned brand for their
Mm-hmm.
testing that they do in fact do. right? And
Mm.
they pride themselves on
Yeah.
that. And now suddenly there's this exposure, and she wanted to be the person that was the notable one
Yeah.
and I just was like, I'm
Hmm.
not even looking at that. I'm gonna do what I want to do and leave me
Yeah.
alone and just don't talk to me, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's like very easy, I feel
Yeah.
like, to
Yeah.
like make that like viral
Yeah.
content because like people
Totally.
freak out, you make it
Yeah.
sound really bad.
Yeah.
People, I've like been trying to keep track because it's now been a while since that
Yeah.
like viral collagen reel.
Yeah.
But most of the people were recommending a brand that was also tested in
Yeah.
that study, again, from years ago, from
Yeah.
one particular batch,
Yeah.
that scored like 2 times higher in heavy
Higher than
metals
by
than the
the
one that they were telling you not to take because,
yeah.
oh no, it tested positive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, did you look at it? Because I
Yeah.
really don't think you did. I
Yeah.
think you saw a reel and you
Yeah.
jumped on it to
Yeah.
sell your own product,
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
so
Right.
it can be really helpful if you actually can like look at results and be like, well, there's actually doesn't look like a really small number.
Yeah.
Or theirs actually is 4 times higher than this other brand that I'm
Sure.
like debating back and forth between.
Yeah.
Like, great, that's a helpful way to decide, or if you want
Yeah.
to choose between flavors.
Yeah.
But it's also like it might be indicative and it might be like relatively common because you're hopefully probably maybe not hopefully probably but like mostly sourcing from the same places. The brands that
Yeah.
I've like met and chatted with back in the day, would get it. They would get in the raw materials, they would test it immediately. If it didn't hit their standard, it would not enter their facility.
Yeah.
They would like send it back. And they said usually like somebody else would buy it
Yeah.
because they didn't care.
They
And
didn't
if it
care.
was
Yeah.
really bad, they would destroy it and like take the loss financially
Yeah.
because they didn't want it on the market because they didn't think it was safe and they knew that
Yeah.
the supplier was going to sell it again. But like they're going to test it and then they're going to make the product and then they're going to test that
Yeah.
and all these things. It's one batch. So
Yeah.
ho like you might
Yeah.
be changing suppliers
Yeah.
if that's not available, if
Yeah.
that didn't test well enough.
Yeah.
Like if it came in and you're like,
Yeah.
nope, all right, well, we need to make this product, so we need to go find somebody else to get
Yeah.
it from because
Yeah.
this was not good enough for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I would prioritize brands that do all the no like all the right testing
Yeah.
versus the ones that like the amount of CBD brands that
Mm.
I've looked and their whole testing is one big page of like cannabinoid content.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool, but did you test for like bacteria
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah. What is there anything else?
pesticides or
Yeah. Yeah.
like literally anything
Yeah.
else or just to
Yeah.
verify that there's like not THC in your product?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because if this is all the testing you did, somebody needs to like help you because you're
Yeah.
not doing enough.
No.
And so I think like everybody's like passing their test, right? Like, again, literally no one that I've ever seen. Some are a lot higher, but they're still under like the threshold, which is
Professional. Yeah.
where you
Yeah.
have to like still look at it if you
Yeah.
can. But like there's just so much that goes out. Like if all you say is third party tested, like
Yeah.
what are you testing? Number
Yeah.
one. Because that third party lab could be testing just your cannabinoid content for
Yeah.
you, and
Yeah.
that's it.
And that's
And
it.
like
And
that's
that's
not
still
enough,
technically
you know?
third
And
party. Yeah, but it's
right, and they
not
didn't
third.
lie. That's an
Yeah.
accurate
Yeah. Yeah.
sentence.
Yeah.
But it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to heavy metals, if it's there, look at it. Just give it
Yeah.
a glance, see if it looks high or low, compare it to another one.
Yeah.
But also if the number's not zero, if
Yeah.
it still looks like relatively small number,
Yeah.
you're allowed to chill.
Yeah.
Like it does
Yeah.
not have to be the end of the world.
Yeah.
A lot of the things on your plate are probably also not
Yeah.
zero for heavy
Yeah.
metals. You just don't know it and you
Yeah.
feel very safe because it's organic and it comes from Whole Foods
Yeah.
and all these things.
Yeah.
It's out there. That's where, like taking care of your body and being able to
Yeah.
like
Detox
process
properly.
this,
Yeah.
right? Like you're
Yeah.
not horrifically overloading your body
Yeah.
with toxins so that
Yeah.
it can hopefully handle this very normal
Yeah.
load
Somehow. Yeah. Well, it's equipped
that's kind
to,
of unavoidable. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you clarified on that. And I guess my question for you would be for anyone who's looking on a website at a supplement brand,
Mhm.
that should just be something listed maybe in their FAQs or like in their, like it's accessible most cases on supplement websites.
So smaller brands tend to either have it on the product page.
Okay.
So the where they usually have like a description and maybe the nutrition or supplement facts label and stuff, like
Yeah.
sometimes they'll have some sort of like lab testing
Okay.
little thing you can click and look at.
Yeah.
If there's nothing on the page or like it doesn't say something that you can click through or something, FAQ, usually a good place to look for it.
Okay.
The about page
Yeah.
sometimes will have, if it doesn't list the actual results, because a lot of the professional brands that I like, for instance, like they might let you enter your batch number,
Yeah.
or they might have some samples, but they don't put everything. They also make like a million times more products than
Yeah. Yeah.
than
Okay.
that. And like it isn't, for people that necessarily go by themselves. But I still like to know what they do.
Yeah.
And so the about page or something about their quality or their manufacturing or
Yes.
their something,
Quality.
like I
Yeah.
would love a
Yeah.
list
Okay.
of like what types of things do you test for?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, smaller brands that you're maybe more likely to like find trendy and want to like check out. A lot of them is either on the product page, on FAQ. I sometimes have trouble finding it at like the top
Yeah.
bar of the
Okay.
website, but if you scroll to the bottom, they usually have like different
Yes.
links at the bottom,
Yes. Yes. I
and
know exactly
sometimes
what you
it's
mean.
like under there.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and I mean, if you were like super, super curious, you could
Send
like
them to me.
DM, right?
Yeah.
Message,
Oh
email,
yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
the brand and just see if they will or not. If
Yeah.
they do the appropriate testing and they're checking that the doses are accurate and the ingredients are accurate and they have proprietary blends, they might not want to share it with you because it should show how much of what is in there and the
Sure.
label, like they're trying to keep that a secret.
Yes.
And yeah, I know some people who make a really big deal out of whether or not they're able to access those. And I'm like, I would rather know that I trust the brand and that they're doing all the right types
Yeah.
of testing and they're maybe testing two, three, four times during the process
Yeah.
from getting the raw material
Yeah.
to the finished product
Yeah.
than like somebody who gives you the test results and is claiming to be super transparent, and like doesn't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
testing actually isn't testing enough
Yeah.
things, or
Yes.
the results
Right.
are kind of high because they don't have their suppliers locked down and
Right.
their own laboratory to be able to test as much as they want without
Sure.
having to worry about the cost or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So you can kind of draw your own line and
Yeah.
boundary wherever
Yeah.
you want. That's just like from my experience, like where I draw mine.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I love to look, especially when people share it. I always think it's interesting to look and
Yeah.
you can compare different flavors
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
different products, different brands, if
Yeah.
you're, again, debating between things and want to factor that in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's huge. I'm so glad that this is yet again something we talked about because I know last time we talked about this too, just testing and third party, all of that.
Yeah.
And that's just so not something that's considered. And, unfortunately, we see this in the food industry as well. A lot of things on the shelves are questionably made.
Hmm.
And so looking critically, if you are someone who takes consideration around the food that you're eating, also to then also utilize that same awareness and, criticism in the supplements that you're taking as well, and letting that be your guide in terms of what you're choosing as opposed to what's trendy or, just buying whatever is on the shelf and, it's grab and go or what's on sale on Amazon or whatever the case may
Hmm.
be. Which I know we talked about Amazon last time, which
Yeah.
is, don't do it. To sum it up, to sum it up.
Spoiler, yeah, yeah.
Yes. All right, Sarah. Well, this has been so, 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 so great. Is there anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with before we wrap up?
I don't know. We covered a lot of good ground, and I think
Yeah.
that the gist is like always read your labels.
Yeah.
If they give you results, read those too. Right?
Yeah.
I am not a big fan of trusting anybody.
Yeah.
Which like maybe sounds really terrible, but like when it
Yeah.
comes to supplements, I'm
Yeah.
like the way like your job is to sell the product and make
Yes.
it sound as good as
Yeah.
possible and that you're the best. And like guess what? You're not all the best.
Yeah. And you're going
And
to
so the
do what
only
you have
way
to do.
to,
Yeah.
right, cut through that is to be able to read that label for
Yeah.
yourself, to judge those ingredients and the
Yeah.
forms. Are they bioavailable?
Yeah.
Do the doses work for you? Like, are the ingredients right for you?
Yeah.
Do they do the testing that they need to
Or-
do? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And like let their product speak for themselves.
Totally.
Like, don't just take their word for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's super helpful. So where can everyone find you if they want to connect with you?
Yes. Instagram
Okay.
at Supplements with Sarah.
Okay,
Sarah has
great.
an H at the end.
Hmm.
I think I actually locked down the handle Supplements with Sarah without an H because it became available, and I'm like, we're gonna do that in case anyone's confused.
Yes.
But I
Oh
don't know
my
if it read.
God.
I don't remember if I made it redirect or not. But either way, you'll
Okay.
see my face.
Okay. Yeah.
One will have a bunch of posts and one won't, and you'll know
Yes.
which one's the right
And you'll know which one is
one.
me. Yes. And I'll also
Um,
link the appropriate
Fantastic.
Instagram in
Yeah.
the show notes. Yes. Keep going.
Yeah, I have a website. It's like currently probably a little bit outdated because I'm working on updating Supplement Mastery if you want to look
Yeah.
at the old description for it. I have a link in my bio on Instagram if you want the free beginner's guide to buying better supplements. probably gonna hear some things you've already heard before now that we're 2 episodes deep in this.
Yeah.
But has, some helpful tips and links and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm totally down if you, have a question or want advice or something. I'm always in the DMs. So,
Yes, love that. Love that. Well, thank you so much again for joining me. This has been so great. And as always, I think there's so much more to be covered. So maybe
mhm.
let's just be, this will be to be continued because I just love picking your brain and hearing from you and your expertise is so valuable. So thank you again for joining me. And thank you to everyone tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. Go follow Sarah. She knows what she's talking about. I'm sure you've learned that from the episode. And the episode that we had last year around this time is linked in the show notes for anyone who is interested in tuning into that as well. But I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next time. In the meantime, be well.